Hey folks, welcome back. Today, I want to dive into something that I think we don't talk about enough. Something that goes way deeper than history books or popular media often show us. We're going to explore Native American culture, but not in a way that just looks at it like a chapter in our past. I want to talk about the living, breathing essence of these cultures, traditions, and wisdom that have existed long before our modern ways took over and that still exist and adapt even now. This isn't just a history lesson. This is about understanding something deeply human, something that's connected to the land we walk on, to the rhythms of nature, and to each other as a society that's always evolving. Think about this. For thousands of years, native cultures across North America have lived in harmony with the earth, drawing meaning and understanding from the world around them in ways that we're only just beginning to recognize again today. Now, in our modern, fast-paced, tech-driven world, there's this yearning that people have, almost this collective fatigue for something real, for something deeply rooted. And I think there's something powerful about looking back, not just for nostalgia, but to actually learn, to gain insight into how we can live more sustainably, more meaningfully, and with a greater sense of connection to each other and to our planet. We live in this world where we're all so connected through our devices, but sometimes it feels like we're more disconnected from what truly matters than ever. Native cultures, though. They understood that connection in ways we're only now realizing are crucial to our survival as a species. They didn't just see land as a resource to be exploited. It was part of them, part of a larger family that includes animals, plants, rivers, and mountains. And they have traditions, ceremonies, and wisdom that have been passed down through generations, holding on to knowledge that we, frankly, need now more than ever. Their ways of knowing aren't just interesting artifacts from another time. They're vital, living philosophies that have a role in the world we're creating right now. Whether we realize it or not, today, as we explore this topic, I want you to keep an open mind, to listen not just with curiosity, but with a sense of respect and understanding. Let's take a moment to step outside of our usual ways of seeing things and listen to voices that have been here for centuries. This is about acknowledging the incredible resilience of native cultures. Despite everything that's been taken from them, despite the histories we often gloss over in favor of simpler narratives, they've survived, they've adapted, and they're still here, offering insights and perspectives that might just help us find some of the balance we've lost along the way. So let's dive in. Let's explore how native wisdom and traditions aren't relics of the past, but instead can be guides for our present and future. We're talking about everything from sustainable living and community resilience to a way of seeing the world that doesn't pit us against nature, but instead shows us how we're part of it. And for everyone listening, I think you'll find something in here that speaks to you on a level you might not expect, whether it's a new understanding, a deeper appreciation, or maybe even a call to action in your own life. All right, let's dig into this. When we talk about Native American culture, it's easy to get lost in the stereotypes, the oversimplified stories that reduce entire nations, entire ways of life, down to a few symbols or images. But the truth is, Native American cultures are rich, layered, and full of depth that most of us never get to see. These cultures are rooted in thousands of years of tradition, carrying knowledge and wisdom that's been passed down through storytelling, ritual, and profound relationship with the natural world. Imagine for a moment what it must have been like to live in a society that didn't see nature as separate or something to be controlled, but as family, something sacred, something you were a part of, not above or outside of. Every piece of their world had meaning. The land, the animals, the rivers, everything was alive with a spirit, and they interacted with it in ways that were built on respect, reverence, and balance. Think about that. a way of life where every action had a purpose beyond personal gain. When they hunted, they didn't just take an animal. They honored it, they gave thanks, and they used every part. It was a reciprocal relationship, a way of existing that didn't overstep or exploit, but instead asked, what can I give back? Imagine living like that, with every choice you made tied to this deeper sense of responsibility. Not because someone told you to, but because it was simply understood that what you did mattered, that it had impact beyond yourself. And these aren't just distant memories or something from a romanticized past. This perspective still exists. There are ceremonies, songs, dances, each one carrying layers of meaning that go back generations, each one teaching those who participate and those who participate and those who observe about gratitude, respect, and the interconnectedness of life. This isn't just culture in the way we might think of it, like a set of traditions to celebrate once in a while. No, this is a worldview, philosophy of living, spiritual practice embedded in daily life. It's a way of thinking and being that reminds us that our actions have consequences, that we're all connected, and that we can't simply take from the world without giving something back. What's mind-blowing to me is how they understood these things intuitively, things we're only now starting to value on a global scale. Today, when we talk about sustainability or environmental consciousness, we're really just scratching the surface of what native cultures have been practicing for centuries. They knew how to live in harmony with the land, not because it was trendy or because someone told them it was the right thing to do, but because it was just part of who they were. And they had systems, beliefs, and stories that reinforced this respect for nature, the sense of belonging to something larger than themselves. These stories weren't just tales. They were lessons, reminders of what happens when we lose that balance. Take, for example, the idea of Mother Earth. For many native cultures, the earth isn't just a resource or a place to live. It's a living, breathing entity, provider and nurturer. They saw the land as something sacred, giver of life. And just like with any relationship, there's a responsibility to care for it, to respect it, to listen to it. Now compare that to the way we often see nature in our modern world. Something to be managed, something to be used efficiently. It's a completely different mindset, one that places value not on profit or production, but on harmony and respect. When they talk about Mother Earth, it's not just a metaphor. It's a reminder that we're children of the earth, that we belong to her, not the other way around. Now think about how powerful that is. Imagine if we all saw the world this way, not as a collection of resources, but as a living, breathing entity that we're connected to. Imagine the kind of change that perspective could bring, not just to how we treat the planet, but to how we treat each other. That's what Native American culture has to offer us. A way of seeing, a way of understanding, and a way of living that's deeply rooted in respect, balance, and gratitude. This isn't just a romantic idea. It's practical, it's meaningful, and honestly, it's necessary if we want to create a future that's sustainable. And just their traditions, their stories, they're a treasure trove of wisdom, a reminder of what's possible when we live with intention and respect for all things. So as we move forward, let's not see these ideas as relics of the past or as quaint traditions to be admired from afar. Let's recognize them for what they are. Profound, valuable ways of being that can teach us, guide us, and maybe even save us if we're willing to listen. And that, I think, is where we'll start to find some answers, by listening to the voices that have been here long before us, by learning from the people who have always understood what it means to live in harmony with the world around us. This isn't just their story. It's our story too, if we're willing to make it part of who we are moving forward. All right, so let's dig even deeper into the role Native American culture plays in our lives today in ways we might not even recognize. Think about it. Native culture is not just preserved in history books or museum artifacts. It's alive, evolving, and it's around us more than we realize. From the arts to environmental movements to the growing awareness of mental health, there's this incredible influence of Native American wisdom that's weaving itself into the fabric of modern life. And while a lot of us might not think about it on a daily basis, the impact is there and it's powerful. Native culture isn't fading away. It's influencing new generations, pushing forward ideas that are timeless, but also totally relevant to the challenges we're facing today. Take art and fashion, for instance. Native American influence is everywhere, in the bold patterns, the natural materials, the designs inspired by nature. But it's not just about aesthetics. There's a depth to it. Native art isn't just beautiful, it's meaningful. Every color, every shape, every symbol has a purpose and a story behind it. There's an intention and spirituality infused in these works that goes beyond surface level. It's a reminder that creativity isn't just about what looks good. It's about expressing something deeper, something connected to identity, to heritage, to nature. But here's the thing. As much as Native culture inspires art and fashion, it's important to honor that inspiration with respect. There's a big difference between cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation. One respects and uplifts the original voices, while the other strips away the meaning and reduces it to a trend. Native art and fashion teach us about authenticity, about honoring where things come from, and about the stories behind the designs that often go untold. Then there's the whole realm of sustainability, a term that's thrown around a lot today, but was a way of life for Native cultures for centuries. They didn't have a word for it because it was simply how they existed. For them, sustainability was an unspoken agreement with the land, a balance they respected naturally. Now, as we grapple with climate change, environmental destruction, and the devastating impacts of overconsumption, we're turning to these ancient practices for answers. Native communities understood that taking from the earth wasn't just about using resources. It was about maintaining a relationship. They had rituals, ceremonies, and practices that ensured they took only what they needed and left enough for future generations. It's an incredibly forward-thinking concept when you realize that despite all of our modern technology, we're still struggling to achieve that kind of balance today. But sustainability isn't just about environmentalism. It's about how we live together as a community. Native culture is built around community, around the idea that everyone has a role, that everyone is valuable. There's a sense of togetherness, of shared responsibility that feels almost radical in today's individualistic society. Imagine if we lived like that, where every person was respected, every contribution valued, and every resource shared with the future in mind. Native cultures weren't isolated. They were interconnected. They had networks, trade routes, alliances, all based on mutual respect and the understanding that survival wasn't about competition, but cooperation. And I think that's something we desperately need to remember in today's world, where so much of our time is spent focusing on individual success, on winning, rather than building communities that are strong, resilient, and inclusive. Mental health is another area where Native wisdom is quietly, powerfully influencing modern life. Native cultures have long understood the importance of mental and spiritual health, long before we had the vocabulary to call it self-care or mindfulness. They had practices and ceremonies to honor the spirit, to heal the mind, to bring peace to those struggling with life's burdens. These weren't separate from everyday life. They were woven into the fabric of their communities. There was no stigma, no shame in seeking help, because the community understood that healing was a shared responsibility.
Yeah.
In our modern world, where mental health is finally becoming something we're openly discussing, I think we have so much to learn from these practices. They teach us that mental health isn't something to be hidden away or handled alone. It's something that involves the whole community, something that deserves time, respect, and care. And then, of course, there's the broader impact of Native spirituality and philosophy on how we understand ourselves in the world today. Many Native cultures have a concept of interconnectedness, a belief that everything is part of a larger web of life. It's a reminder that we're not isolated beings just here to look out for ourselves, but rather parts of something bigger, more meaningful. This philosophy isn't just relevant, it's essential as we confront the crises of our time. From social division to environmental collapse, native wisdom challenges us to think about our place in the world in a way that's humbling, that encourages us to look beyond ourselves and to recognize the ripple effects of our actions. So when you start to see Native American culture in this light, it's not just a chapter in a history book or a museum exhibit. It's not just something that belongs in the past. It's an ongoing influence, a source of strength and guidance for a world that's struggling to find balance and meaning. Native culture is showing us that it's not too late to remember who we are, to reconnect with the earth, with each other, and with something bigger than ourselves. And as we go forward, I think that's a message worth holding on to, that there's wisdom in these traditions that can help us find our way, not just back to nature, but back to ourselves. That's the true legacy of Native American culture, and it's alive right here in the present, waiting for us to listen and learn. Let's take a closer look at something that might surprise you, the lessons we can learn from Native American culture about resilience, adaptation, and maybe most importantly, the power of tradition in a world that's constantly changing. In so many ways, Native cultures have had to redefine what it means to hold on to identity, to stay true to heritage, while also adapting to a world that often doesn't make space for that heritage. Imagine that, trying to honor centuries, old beliefs and practices while dealing with a modern society that, at best, ignores you and at worst, actively works against your way of life. But here's the beautiful part. Native people haven't just held on. They've transformed, evolved, and brought those ancient traditions forward, adapting them in ways that keep them relevant and powerful today. In a time when so many of us feel disconnected or overwhelmed by the pace of change, there's a lot we can learn from this kind of resilience. Native American culture shows us that tradition isn't just about clinging to the past. It's about using the past as a foundation to build something stronger in the present. Take language, for example. For generations, native languages were suppressed, even outlawed, in an attempt to erase entire identities. But today, there's a revival happening with young Native people learning their ancestral languages and teaching them to their children, using everything from in-person classes to online apps and social media. These languages aren't just words. They're keys to a worldview, to a way of understanding life and one's place in the world. Mm-hmm. When you bring back a language, you're not just preserving sounds and syntax. You're breathing life back into an entire culture. And it's not easy. But they're doing it day by day, word by word. Now think about ceremonies and rituals. In a world that's constantly pushing forward, it can be easy to dismiss tradition as outdated or unnecessary. But Native American rituals aren't relics. They're living practices, evolving while staying connected to their roots. These ceremonies, whether it's a healing ritual, a dance, or a celebration of the changing seasons, hold immense power. They create spaces for reflection, for community, for grounding in a world that often feels chaotic. Imagine what our lives would look like if we had those kinds of anchors, if we could pause, even just for a moment, to reconnect with something bigger than ourselves. For Native people, these ceremonies offer that chance to come together, to remember, to connect to both their ancestors and to future generations. In doing so, they're not just preserving tradition, they're strengthening their communities, reinforcing bonds, and creating a sense of continuity that stretches across time. And here's the thing, these aren't exclusive practices. There's something universal about them, something that anyone can understand and appreciate. They teach us that honoring the past doesn't mean resisting change. It means grounding ourselves in something meaningful as we move forward. It's a lesson in balance, in knowing who you are and where you come from, so that no matter how fast the world changes, you have something steady to hold on to. Imagine if we approached our own lives that way. Think about how many of us search for that kind of stability, that sense of belonging. Native culture shows us that it's possible, that tradition isn't a weight holding you back. It's a foundation that gives you strength to adapt, to grow, to face whatever challenges come your way. But beyond ceremonies and language, there's a deeper lesson here about community and responsibility. In Native cultures, community isn't just a group of people living in the same place. It's a shared responsibility. There's this understanding that what happens to one person affects the whole, that the well-being of each individual is tied to the well-being of everyone else. That's powerful, especially in a world where we're often encouraged to think of ourselves first, to focus on our own needs, our own success. Native communities remind us that individual well-being is inseparable from collective. Well-being is inseparable from collective well-being. When one person suffers, it's felt by everyone. And when one person succeeds, that success is shared. Imagine if we could bring even a little bit of that perspective into our own lives, our own neighborhoods, our own communities. What would it look like if we lived not just for ourselves, but with a sense of responsibility to those around us? And there's one more thing that stands out to me, something that might just be the most profound lesson of all: the ability to find hope and purpose in the face of hardship. For Native Americans, survival itself has been an act of resilience. They've endured colonization, forced relocation, the loss of land, language, and even family members. And yet they've held on to hope, to purpose, to the belief that their culture has something important to offer the world. That's not just inspiring. It's a testament to the strength of the human spirit. It's a reminder that resilience isn't just about getting through tough times. It's about holding on to what matters, finding meaning, and believing in something bigger than yourself. It's about understanding that no matter what happens, you have the power to carry your identity, your culture, and your values forward. So when we look at Native American culture, we're not just seeing a culture that's endured, we're seeing a culture that's thrived, that's adapted, that's found ways to stay relevant in a world that's constantly changing. And in that, I think we can find a roadmap, kind of inspiration for our own lives. We can learn that tradition doesn't have to be rigid. It can be flexible, strong enough to bend without breaking. We can see that community isn't just about proximity, but about shared purpose, about looking out for one another. And we can take away a profound respect for resilience, not just the resilience to survive, but the resilience to grow, to create, and to offer something meaningful to the world. That's the lesson here, that even in a world where everything feels like it's moving too fast, there's strength in looking back, in learning from those who came before us. Native American culture isn't just a part of the past. It's a gift to the present, a guide for the future. And I think if we're willing to listen, really listen, we might find a way forward that's not just about surviving, but thriving. We might find a way to build something that's meaningful, connected, and lasting. Because at the end of the day, isn't that what we're all searching for? A way to live with purpose, with connection, with a sense of belonging that's rooted in something real, something timeless. Native American culture shows us that it's possible, that we have the power to carry forward what's most important, to honor the past while creating a future that's worth living in. And that, my friends, is something worth paying attention to. All right, so we've explored the richness of Native American culture, the resilience of their traditions, and the powerful lessons they have to offer about balance, respect, and community. But now, I want to bring this full circle, because if there's one thing I hope you walk away with, it's this. Native American culture isn't just a resource or an idea for us to admire from a distance. It's something we can learn from, engage with, and even help uplift in our own ways. This isn't about seeing Native culture as an artifact or something to be preserved in a museum. It's about recognizing it as a living, evolving force that has a place in our modern world, one that can help shape the future for all of us. You see, acknowledging the importance of Native American culture isn't just a nice sentiment. It's a call to action, a reminder that each of us has a role in ensuring these voices are heard, these traditions respected, and this wisdom shared. But what does that actually look like? It can start with something as simple as educating ourselves, truly taking the time to understand the history, the struggles, and the contributions of Native communities. It means moving beyond what we think we know, beyond the romanticized or stereotypical images, and digging into the reality. Because understanding the reality, because understanding the real stories isn't always comfortable. It can challenge us, make us question what we've been taught, but it's necessary, because only when we see the full picture can we begin to honor the depth and resilience of Native American culture with the respect it deserves. And honoring Native culture also means supporting it in tangible ways. Look around you. There are Native-owned businesses, artists, creators, educators, and activists who are keeping their heritage alive while contributing something new and valuable to society. When we buy from Native artists, when we support Native-led initiatives, or when we engage with their stories on a deeper level, we're not just consumers, we're participants. We're actively choosing to be part of a future that respects and uplifts these cultures rather than just admiring them from afar. And this goes even further when we think about policies, about the rights and lands of Native people, and about our roles in advocating for justice and respect. Supporting Native culture means standing with Native people in their fights for land rights, for clean water, for sovereignty, and for the right to protect their sacred sites and ways of life. It's about using our voices to back theirs and understanding that these aren't isolated issues. They're part of a larger story, one that we all share responsibility in shaping. But perhaps the most personal, transformative way we can honor Native American culture is by letting its values inspire and influence our own lives. Think about how the philosophies of respect for nature, balance, and community could reshape the way we live, the way we treat each other, and the way we care for our planet. These aren't abstract ideas. They're practical, and they're deeply relevant in today's world. Imagine if we carried even a small piece of this mindset into our own lives. If we approached our communities with a spirit of shared responsibility, if we treated our natural resources as sacred, if we listened with open minds to perspectives that challenge us to grow. Native culture reminds us that we're part of something bigger, that our actions have weight, and that we can create lives of meaning and purpose when we ground ourselves in values that go beyond personal gain. And look, I'm not saying this is an easy shift to make. Our society is built on different values, on independence, on individual success. But maybe that's exactly why these Native perspectives are so powerful. They offer us an alternative, a way of being that feels more connected, more human. They remind us that our lives don't have to be driven by consumption or competition, that there's beauty and fulfillment in community and simplicity, in knowing that we're part of a long continuum and that we have a responsibility to those who come after us. So as we close this journey, I want to leave you with thought. The wisdom of Native American culture isn't just a treasure for Native people. It's a gift to all of us. It's a legacy that has survived against all odds, a resilience that speaks to the power of human spirit, and a reminder that there's another way to live, one that's deeply in tune with the world and with each other. It's not about going back in time or romanticizing the past. It's about taking these timeless values forward, letting them guide us, shape us, and help us build a future that's more balanced, more just, and more whole. So let's not let this be just another conversation that we nod along to and then forget. Let's carry it with us into our choices, our communities, and our daily lives. Let's be open to learning, to listening, and to engaging with Native culture in ways that are real and meaningful, because in a world that often feels like it's spinning out of control, there's something incredibly grounding, incredibly hopeful in these lessons. They remind us that no matter how much changes, there are ways of living, ways of being that can keep us connected, centered, and strong. That's the legacy of Native American culture. And if we're willing to embrace it, it just might be the legacy of all of us. As we wrap up this conversation, I want you to take a moment and let everything we've discussed sink in. It's easy to let our daily lives pull us along so fast that we forget to ask ourselves the bigger questions. Questions about who we are, where we come from, and what kind of future we're building. And that's what today's exploration of Native American culture has been about. It's an invitation to pause, to reflect, and to realize that there are other ways to live, other values to embrace, and perhaps even a deeper purpose waiting for us, and perhaps even a deeper purpose waiting for us if we're willing to reach for it. Native American culture offers us so much more than we might realize. It's a lens, a way of seeing that shifts our perspective from me to we, from taking to giving, from disconnect to connection. It's a perspective that challenges us to think about life not just as a series of personal goals, but as a shared journey, one that includes everyone around us, everything in nature, and those who will come long after we're gone. Think about that. Really think about it. What would it mean if we all lived with that kind of consciousness? If we didn't just consume resources but felt responsible for them? If we didn't just connect through technology but also found a deeper connection to each other, to our communities, and to the land? Native wisdom isn't just knowledge. It's a call to be intentional, to treat each moment, each interaction, each decision as something that matters, something that contributes to a larger whole. This isn't just a nice idea. It's a profound truth, one that reminds us that our actions today shape the world of tomorrow. It's a responsibility, but it's also a privilege to be able to learn from these cultures, to be able to listen to voices that have carried wisdom through centuries, through hardships, through resilience. And, the beauty of all this is that it's not about perfection. It's about intention. Native culture teaches us that life isn't about getting everything right or being flawless. It's about living with respect, living with purpose, and understanding that we're all part of something bigger than ourselves. Imagine if we could live even a fraction of our lives with that kind of intention. If we could hold that sense of reverence in our hearts, letting it guide the way we treat others, the way we treat others, the way we treat the environment, and the way we treat ourselves. That's what Native culture offers us, a path toward a life that's full, meaningful, and deeply connected. So here's my challenge to you. Let this conversation be more than just words. Take what you've heard, let it sink in, and ask yourself what it means for your life, your choices, your actions. What small changes can you make? How can you bring this perspective into your own world? Because the truth is, every one of us has a part to play in this story. We all have the chance to create a world that's more balanced, more just, and more grounded in the values that make us human. And it doesn't have to be something big. Even the smallest acts, the simplest shifts in mindset can add up to something powerful over time. In the end, Native American culture isn't just a reminder of the past. It's a guide to the future. It shows us that we don't have to be at odds with each other, that we don't have to dominate the earth or live disconnected from what truly matters. Instead, we can choose to live in harmony, in community, and in respect for all life. And maybe, just maybe, that's the key to finding the kind of peace, the kind of fulfillment that so many of us are searching for. Thank you for being here, for taking this journey with me. I hope this conversation has inspired you, challenged you, and maybe even changed the way you see the world just a little bit. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that we all have the power to make a difference. And that difference starts with us right here, right now. So go out there, carry these ideas with you. Let them shape your choices, and remember, we're all in this together. Let's make it count.